ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಸರ್.
Okay, great, thank you. So, first of all, ಶನಿವಾರ ಬೆಳಿಗ್ಗೆ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಶೂರ್ ವೀಕೆಂಡ್ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕೆಲಸಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಈ ಒಂದು ಸಮಯನ ನನಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್. SJKS ಸಂಘದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರಿಗೂ ನನಗೆ ಇದು ಆಪರ್ಚುನಿಟಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಗೇನ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ನಾನು ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಸೆಮಿನಾರ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಹಿಂದೆ. ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಸೆಮಿನಾರ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ವಾಸ್ ಆಲ್ ಡೇಟಾ ಡ್ರಿವನ್. ಈಗ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋ ವೆಬಿನಾರು ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಯುನಿಕ್. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಆನ್ ಮೈ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಸಿ ಲೆಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಡೇಟಾ in the discussions. Okay, the idea behind the webinar is, of course, we are trying to figure out, okay, what are the things beyond the normal stuff anybody does. English alli bandbidutte maatarta kshamisi. What are the things beyond the normal things we do that will make your journey to your home purchase easy and stress free. Okay, and how to be grounded. Before I start, general disclaimer, please do not consider this as a financial advice. ಅದಕ್ಕೇನಾದ್ರೂ ಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ CFA ಅಥವಾ CP ಅವರ ಹತ್ರ ಮಾತಾಡಿ. ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ. ಓಕೆ, ಅಜೆಂಡಾ. ಸೊ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಮುಂಚೆ ಕ್ವಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಒಂದು ರಿಯಲ್ ಎಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ ಅಪ್ಡೇಟ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ. ನಂತರ 3 important things that comes up in any home purchase, okay, or that needs to come up, like strategy, stress, emotions. I will go into those aspects, and of course question and answers. ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾದರೂ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನೋ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮೈಕ್ ಅನ್ನ ಅನ್ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಕೇಳಿ. ಬಟ್ ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಟ್ರೈ ಟು ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ದ ಫ್ಲೋ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್.
Girish, sorry to interrupt. Can you make one more time to make me host? Because ಬೇರೆ ಡಿವೈಸ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ.
ಓಕೆ, ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
ಓಕೆ, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
ಓಕೆ, ಸರಿ. So with that, let's start. Real estate market update. So at least it will give us some perspective ಏನಾಗ್ತಿದೆ ಈಗ ರಿಯಲ್ ಎಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ. ನನಗೆ ಸ್ಯಾನ್ ವಾಕಿನ್ ಕೌಂಟಿ ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಡೇಟಾ ನನ್ನ MLS ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಐ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಪಿಕ್ಡ್ ಅಪ್ ಮೌಂಟೇನ್ ಹೌಸ್. ಬಟ್ ನೀವು ಮೌಂಟೇನ್ ಹೌಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಸಿಟಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ರೆ, ವೆದರ್ ಇಟ್ ಸ್ಯಾನ್ ವಾಕಿನ್ ಆರ್ ಸಮ್ ಅದರ್ ಕೌಂಟಿ, ನನಗೆ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ರೀಚ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಏಬಲ್ ಟು give you the information, and I can also talk you about what's happening in those markets. So mountain house, long story short helbekandre, if you look at this number which is called market action index anta, this is like market temperature. Okay, this number goes from 0 to 100, and right now it is 81. ಈ ನಂಬರು, if it is more than 30, it is considered seller's market. If this number is less than 30, it's buyer's market. So as you can see, this number is 81, andre it is in a seller's market, and it's in a very strong seller's market. Okay, meaning sellers control the negotiation. That's what seller's market is. What it means underlying that is the inventory is very low. Even though the interest rate has gone up, there are still many buyers still in the market, but they are fighting for the low inventory. Inventory ಯಾಕೆ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, I think most of you would be aware if you are reading articles here and there. Lot of sellers don't want to sell. Reason, they are all locked up with the low interest rate below 3%. And what they always think, ಮನೆ ಮಾರ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿ ಬಂತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಈ 3% ಗಿಂತ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ರೇಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟು they have to end up buying house, which is definitely going to cost them higher interest rate. Today's interest rate is like hovering around 7%. So agagi, unless the selling the house is very critical for them, they are not selling it, even though in a normal situation they would have sold it. Agagi, inventory is very less. So eventually it has led to a situation where there is low supply and high demand, and that is why you see that the market is very strong, pretty strong. Okay, that's in Mountain House. ಬೇರೆ ಕಡೆ ಏನಾಗ್ತಿದೆ, elsewhere in Alameda and Contra Costa counties, same situation, but instead of showing the previous picture of market action index, I decided, okay, let me show what's happening from a historical perspective. So if you can see this graph, graphically you see a light green bar and a dark green bar, right, together as a pair. The light green bar represents the supply of homes, and the dark green bars represents the number of homes sold, which you can more or less consider as the demand of homes. So each pair of this line bar is for a quarter, right? One quarter. Eshtu manegalu ittu supply, eshtu mane sale aitu anta. This goes back to 2008, when we were in the middle of the crash, or at the beginning of the crash. So you can see the light green bar when there was a crash, right, is significantly high, which means supply was a lot compared to number of homes got sold. And you very well know what happened during that time when the supply was so high and the demand was low. Of course, the prices came down significantly. Now, if you go back to the right-hand side of this graph, you can see where the supply is today, right? This is from April to June of this year. Very, very less. And you can see the demand is matching, meaning number of homes got sold was almost equal to number of homes that were in the market. So which means there is an intense battle between supply and demand today. And supply is very low, as you can see. And that is why you see the prices are high. Even though the interest rate has gone up, the home prices have not significantly come down to neutralize the increase in interest rate. Okay. Now, the common feeling that runs across is, oh, so many things are happening in the economy, especially with what happened in 2008, when prices significantly ramped up after the dot-com burst up until 2007. It eventually led to a housing bubble and the market crashed, right? And you can see some similarity with the home prices having gone up, especially after COVID. And the thinking is, oh, is it going to crash? However, there is a big difference between what happened in 2008 to what is happening now. So one thing is, mortgage credit availability index anta ondide. It basically is a number which tells you how easily you can get mortgage. The higher the number, the more easier it is to get a mortgage. So you can see during the bubble, this number was 868.7, which means pretty easy to get a mortgage. Whereas today it is 103.2. Okay, what does it mean? That means people just can't go and get a mortgage and then buy a house, and thereby, there are more buyers in the market able to buy a house because they're getting easy loan, which eventually leads to price appreciation and leads to a bubble. That situation is not there today compared to what it was in 2008. Second thing, foreclosures. And what you can see, 2007 Q1 to 2010 Q4, you can see the number of foreclosures significantly high. Why was it happening? Because all those people who bought homes, even though they couldn't afford because banks were giving 100% loan, when things went down, they basically didn't want the house, especially those who had bought second, third, fourth homes, and they just walked out of the homes and foreclosed it. Ega situation illa. You can see the numbers. The foreclosures are significantly low because people are not walking out. It is not like everybody has 2, 3, 4 homes, which they cannot afford. The third thing is supply of homes, which we already saw. Supply of homes significantly high during the housing market crash period, whereas the supply of homes is very less. This numbers you see is the months of supply. Okay, in real estate, we measure how much supply we have in months. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ತಿಂಗಳಾಗತ್ತೆ ಈ ಇರೋ ಮನೆಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಸೇಲ್ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ. ಸೊ around the crash time, you are looking everything above 8 months or more. Today, the amount of homes available is significantly less, 2.7 months. This is across the country. If you look at Bay Area, this is even lower. You are looking at 1 month, 1.1 month, or even in some cases less than a month of supply, which is basically nothing, meaning there's absolutely no supply. And also, amount of equity people have in today's home is significantly higher compared to 2008. Avaga total amount of equity was around $1.3 trillion. Today it is at least, more than 3, close to 3.1 trillion dollars. Andre balashtu jana homeowners, they have their own money as equity in the house, so they are not going to walk away. So a lot of these conditions or situations today is totally different from what it was during the crash period. And the chances of a housing market bubble, which is not there, or a crash is not going to happen with these conditions. Nobody is going to walk away from the home, okay, with all this. Even the interest rate, right? Less than 3%, most of them are locked in. So they won't walk out. Even if they walk out, let's say for whatever reason they have to sell the house, it's not going to be underwater. So they are going to make money. Not only the bank is going to get paid their full loan amount, even the homeowners are going to walk away with profit. Okay. All right. So hopefully that will give some perspective of where we are as a real estate market today. Now let's talk about how to make your home buying purchase easy and stress-free, how to make sure that we have a plan to, get from point A to point B. So let me give an analogy related to driving a car from point A to point B, and consider that as, staying from where you are today to, let's say you want to purchase a house, which is point B. So ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲೇ ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, you need to have something in hand, right? So that you know where you are going. Andre, if I give an address to you people and say, okay, illik banni 11 ಗಂಟೆಗೆ ನಾಳೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, you need an address. You need to plan your time so that you are there by 11 a.m. Also, you need directions, right? And you also need to make sure that if there are any hiccups on the way, maybe there is a road closure, maybe there is an accident, you know what to do. When you don't have any of these things, right? Let's say you don't have Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever map we use today online to get to that place. What do you have to do? If assuming you're not gone to that place in the past, what you have to do is, get directions, maybe go to AAA, get a map and figure out where it is, talk to the host and say, okay, directions ellide anta. Host will say, okay, you take I-80 East and you take this exit, and, all those things has to be done. And then as you're driving, at every junction, you have to make sure, oh, did I skip that exit, right? So what is going to happen during the journey for you is there is stress, right? Because you don't know whether you're doing the right thing. You don't know whether you missed the exit. And if you did miss the exit, that stress level increases. Now you have to figure out how to get back. So the point I'm trying to make is, when you do not have the information, when you do not have the data, that will create a lot of stress. And it is the same thing with a house purchase. When you're trying to purchase a house, you need to know where you are. You need to have a plan. You need to have the data necessary. So that way, at every junction, when you have to make decisions, you should be able to make the decision easily because you know what you're doing, right? Let's say when you come to a junction, you don't know whether you have to make a left or right turn. If you have a map, it will tell you. If you don't have a map, then it will create a lot of stress for you. So basically getting to purchase a house does involve all these aspects. It is like a mini project. And we do this on everyday basis. Every day morning we wake up, we have at the back of our mind, maybe we have something going on today. You have to plan for it. Maybe we have few things going on today. You need to figure out which one need to be done first. So you have to prioritize. You need to make sure it is efficient. Meaning, let's say you on the way to whatever place you're going, and then coming back, you may have to buy groceries. You have to figure out, okay, ಯಾವ grocery stores ಇದೆ on the way ಅಂತ. You don't want to go to that place, come back home, and then decide, okay, I want to buy groceries and go back to a grocery store, which may be the same distance or the same direction as you first took. So you always do this intuitively, this planning. So it is like a project. Same thing with real estate. If you just jump into buying a property without knowing where you are and what you want and how to get there, you will be simply stressing yourself out and making your task much difficult. And who knows, on the spur of the moment, you may be making the wrong decisions because you are basically taking on the spur decisions. All those things need not happen if you plan it correctly. And if you do all those things, if you have a strategy, if you have a plan, if you have a goal, you know where you want to go, how you can get there, then naturally you will have less stress, okay? And you don't make decisions based on emotions. All right, what is the meaning of strategy? Basically, the best definition I could get was, it's a well-defined roadmap with choices and trade-offs. It's important to know the strategy is not one single way of doing things. It will have choices and trade-offs, and you should be willing to make those choices and trade-offs as you get along the path. There may be things you like, or there may be things you like that you won't get, and you should be willing to make trade-offs. If you already know those are the things you have to deal with, that also makes your decision-making easy. How do people mostly get stress? Most of the stress basically is fear of the unknown, right? But if you know what you're doing, that removes a significant amount of stress. And that was explained to you earlier in that car driving scenario. Okay, so how do you strategize? Okay, so I said about general aspects of strategy. I gave analogy and stuff. What exactly do you have to do to strategize your property purchase? The first few things you have to know is, especially the very first question you should ask is, why do you want to buy a property? You should know why you are buying. Okay, whether it is for you to live in the house or whether it is an investment property, you need to have a reason why you're buying. You should know that. You should consider the options. What if I don't buy a house? What will happen? Okay, or if I do buy the house, what will happen? If it's an investment property, same question. Can I invest in real estate with whatever money I have? Is that the best way to do? Or maybe there are other options of investment, and real estate may not be the best option for you. It all depends on individuals and their risk profile and how much money they have to invest. But at the end of the day, you need to define the why, okay? And you need to understand what are the benefits or pitfalls of buying a property, okay? Now, once you answered the question why, you need to know where do you stand today, currently, right? Without knowing where we are, we cannot get to where we want to, right? So that involves understanding your current financial situations. The first and foremost important thing for anybody who is planning to buy real estate, whether for investment or primary house, is to have a grasp on their finances. Get a pre-approval. Understand what the lender is willing to lend based on your income, your debt, etc., etc. And then, even if the lender say, yes, you are pre-approved for $2 million, maybe you don't want to buy a property worth $2 million, right? Because you have other things you want to consider. And you may want to define your own budget less than $2 million. So you need to know that. You need to know where exactly you want to be and how much you are willing to put as far as finance is concerned. Then you have to look at your family situation, right? You're married or not married. If you're married, how many children do you have? What are their ages? What do you see that purchase? How do you see that purchase will affect your family, right? In terms of, okay, community, right? I'm just giving some examples. Okay, you go and you decide, okay, I want to buy a house. Okay, what kind of community your family will be living, not just the man or woman of the house. And how does it fit into it? Let's say you have young kids, elementary going school kids. Do they need friends, right? Similar temperament, or maybe similar background. Will this community give me that? Will a single family house give me more of such an opportunity where my kids will find more kids to find? Or maybe a condo or townhouse which is densely packed, maybe they have better chances of finding kids, and a common area within the community where the kids can gather and play, right? There are so many aspects of the family. I just picked one that you need to consider, right? So, okay, where we are and how long do you think you will stay in the house will all matter. And of course, your work that also defines, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, how does it affect buying a house in, wherever you plan to buy, right? Or not just about commute, it's also about, okay, do you have any misgivings about your work? Is the company not doing well, or your department not doing well? Now, only you can decide that, and will that affect, maybe 2 years down the line, unfortunately, one of you ends up not earning because you lost a job. Now, will that be a big problem for you? So all those things need to be considered. You need to know where you are today before you jump to where you want to be. And of course, you always have to define time frame when you buy properties. Unlike India, where usually ನಾವು ಮನೆ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ತಂದೆ ತಾಯಿಗಳಾಗ್ಲಿ ಯಾರೇ ಆಗಿದ್ದು, there would never have been a thought that, okay, 5, 6, 10 years later, we'll sell this house and move to another house, right? Most of the time, India ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ, that is it. You buy it and that will stay. ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಮರಿ ಮಕ್ಕಳುವರೆಗೂ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. That's not the case here. In US, especially in the Bay Area, lifestyle changes, job changes, a lot of things happen. And people generally don't live there forever. So typically 7 to 10 years is what one person will stay in a house. And you need to figure out, okay, for the next 7 to 10 years, if that is the average, will this house sufficiently meet my needs? Right? That's all you have to look for. Don't look for another 40 years of living there, typically, unless you know for a fact that you're not going to move out within the short time. So all these things are necessary. These are all part of your strategy. Okay. You need to define your needs and wants. So I touched upon it in the previous slides. Needs and wants may be related to the property, the type of property, how we want to be. The needs and wants could be related to the location, right? Where it is, which city, which neighborhood, and what will fit your needs. And of course, how long do you plan to hold a property? Okay, that also you need to have some idea. I'm not saying if you define a number, you have to stick to it, but you should have at least some idea. Okay, this is typically what I'm thinking, 6, 7, 8 years, maybe, right? And have some idea, not that 6, 7, 8 years admele you shouldn't continue to live there, but having some idea will help you. Okay. Again, part of the strategy is always be prepared for trade-offs. Trade-offs will happen, okay, because there is no such thing as a perfect house. You will end up having to make compromises. So when you list out your needs and wants, usually clients ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, if they are married between husband and wife, I tell them to list down everything. Sit together, have a cup of coffee, no disturbance. Sit together and brainstorm and come up with a list of everything you want, everything you need, right? And that list can go to ridiculous amount of numbers, right? Maybe 100 such items, maybe some frivolous things, doesn't matter, write whatever you want. But at the end of the day, I tell them, out of those lists, just pick the top 2 or 3 without which you will not buy the house, right? You have to prioritize, you have to compromise. And whenever you come to that point where you have to make trade-offs, don't get hung up on it. Oh, Nange, I wanted this kind of a house, and this house is perfect in every sense, but this is not there, right? One item which you wanted is not there. So take a pause when that happens. Ask yourself, so what if you don't have it? Does it mean life and death? Is the sky going to fall? Can you still live in the house and be happy? Absolutely, according to my experience, right? It's all in the mind. Unless that item which is not there in that property is not among the 2 or 3 top priority items which I spoke earlier, right? If it is not there, then forget about it. For example, people who believe in Vastu, want the home door, let's say for simplistic sake, facing in a specific direction. And anything else is a definite no for them, okay? Then if that house is not in the direction they want, and that is in the top priority for them, then definitely ignore that. I'm not asking you to do a trade-off there, but I have to be ready to make trade-offs in everything else, because there is no perfect house. Also, there will be many times, it has happened many times with my own clients, that they need to reevaluate, right? After some time, the reality will start coming into picture, right? What we want is one thing, but the reality will start coming into picture. When you see that again and again, the reality could be related to anything, either the type of property or the location or the budget or whatever it is, they realize, okay, this is not going to happen. We have searched home for last 3 months and I'm not able to get to what I want. Then don't be afraid to reevaluate, okay, and see, okay, where are the things that can be adjusted so that you get what you want, okay? Like I said, it's not a defeat. For some people, it's a defeat. Somebody who wanted to buy a townhouse, single family house, all they were getting in that city were townhouse for their budget. And now they are very disappointed and upset, and they think it's a defeat that they cannot get a single family house, whereas their colleague who earns the same amount of salary was able to get a single family house. Don't compare to Johnson's. What the colleague got, what they did, it is their life. Our life is different. So having to reevaluate is not a defeat, it is being smart. Okay, it is making sure that you get what you need without compromising, because at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. The first house you buy is not your forever house. Eventually, you will move out, like I said, and then you will get to another house. Your financial situation would have changed, your needs would have changed, and you'll get another house, and you will buy what you want at that point of time. So don't worry about reevaluate. Okay. So I talked in all the previous slides about strategy. Okay. Now, eventually, when you have that predefined strategy, you know what you are going to do, when you know where you stand today, and you know what you're trying to achieve, right? That makes your plan concrete. That makes your ability to make decisions easy, because now you have a path defined. And whenever you try to waver off from the path, okay, you're crossing the strategically laid out plan, and you'll come back to the path. That is why it's very important to strategize and plan. If you don't do that, then you don't know where you're going. Once you have a strategy and path, it will a strategy and a plan, then you have a path which you have defined for yourself. And you have to be within that path for you to move forward. So whenever things happen during your home purchase process, you can figure out, oh, am I doing something beyond what we already decided to do? Because you have a predefined guideline, then that will bring you back to where you should be, right? eventually what that will do is it will take the stress out of your home purchase process. Okay. And stress and emotions are related. But the kind of emotions I'm talking about is not about the interconnection between stress and emotion. The kind of emotion I'm talking about is whenever we make a purchase, we are not robots, right? We are human beings. We don't just make logical decisions for everything, right? We are emotional beings. So there is a lot of emotions involved, especially in a big purchase as a house, especially as significant as buying a house where you'll bring up your family. There will be a ton of emotions involved. And I'm not asking anybody to ignore those emotions. I'm actually asking people to use the emotions to channel it to the way that it will fit your bills, fit your requirements. Yeah, what do I mean by that? Okay, let's say you laid out some of the things that you want about where you want, how you want it, how the property should be. You have also got the location identified and you know exactly what you want to do, you know your finances. But there may be 10 house which meets all those description, but maybe just one house out of 10 is something that makes you feel at home, comfortable, you love it. Right? So absolutely, there is nothing wrong in using those emotions to fall in love with it. Please fall in love with that house and go for it. Okay. But only thing to keep in mind here is don't fall in love on a house which is outside the boundary of all the strategic planning and the guidelines you define. Right. Don't go and overstretch yourself, especially everything leads to finances at that point of time. Right. If you already defined a budget and you know what it will cost you on a per month basis, and then you see a house which is beautiful, you love it, most everything you need, but it's way above, it is a bit of a stretch for you, then you have to rethink, is this something that will create problem for you on a month-to-month basis? Because now you are paying so much to your house. Now, instead of enjoying the house, you are now living paycheck by paycheck. And God forbid, if something bad happens, you will be in a big soup. That is what I mean by not letting emotions overtake the guidelines, but also using emotions to find the house you want. You got to remember one though, let's say you're going through a forest and it is dark in the evening and you need to use your flashlight and you know where you have to go, but you can't see your destination and using flashlight. See, the flashlight you on Madaga, it will not show your destination because it's far away. What the flashlight will show is the next few steps you have to take. And that's how it should be. Whereas you know, and you should know where you are going, don't get burnt up about the entire journey. Take one step at a time. So at every juncture when you are buying a house, there are steps you have to take for a home purchase. So don't get freaked out. Just do the first few things you need to do. For example, well, you need to get pre-approval done. First step, okay? Get it done. You need to have a consultation with your real estate agent. Have that consultation. Understand some of the basic things. And then you need to start looking at homes. Do it. Don't hurry, right? Take your time. Get comfortable with going and looking at homes, neighborhoods, see what you like, what you don't like. Try to collect data, right? Maybe in the process, you would have found a house which you would have bought, but because you're so early in the process, you don't know whether it's the right house. And that's okay to miss it. Because even if it is the best house and you do end up buying in a hurry, you will never know whether that was the right choice because you did not explore other things. So, ಹಾಗಾಗಿ always take one step at a time, be comfortable with everything you're doing, and then you'll slowly understand exactly what you want to do. You will understand when you are ready to pull the trigger. Okay, so that's about emotions and stress. Eventually, underline ಮಾಡಿ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ, this all I'm going to say, you need to do everything about that strategy point that I discussed earlier. You need to know where you are, you need to know where you are going, you have to understand what happens in between, and you should be informed so that at every point of time when you make decisions, you have information as your friend. Okay. So long time ago when I was a teenager, I read this book called Fear is the Key, and probably these kinds of books are no more the in thing for today's generation. The book is all about how the main character in the novel uses fear to make his opponents make decisions, right, in his favor. And it's also true from my own observation, people make decisions based on fear rather than realistic, rational decisions. Again, this is about emotions, right? However, instead of fear driving you to make a decision and eventually, making wrong decisions, if you read the quote here by Lao Tzu, I'll just read the last part. Mastering yourself is true power, meaning knowing who you are, what you want is true power, right? If you do that, whether it's in real estate purchase or anything in life, you will not feel stressed and, having all these unnecessary things happen for you. Of course, we'll make mistakes, and that's how we learn, but at least when you do make the decision, you know what you're doing, and things may go wrong. That's a different thing. All right. Having said that, let me see what's the time now. 9:30, 10:45. Okay, good. Let's see. Now ಈಗೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ವಲ್ಲ, ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ how can we break it down into actual steps we need to take while considering purchasing of a house. Okay. So, and I'm not going back to the strategy part. These are just the steps. Just think about this is a culmination of everything we talked. So first thing is you need to know your boundaries. So you need to understand, do you need to buy a house? Please do an introspection on that part, and then ask yourself or have a chat with your better off and see, okay, you need to buy a house. Why do you need to buy a house? Why is the need? Is it a need or a want? Okay, just come to some brainstorming and understanding. Most people, the answer is yes, they need to buy a house, right? For various reasons, especially because they don't want to keep paying rents. And that's okay, that's the simple answer. But at least this exercise is more to invoke your own emotions and put it down on paper. Once you decide you need to buy a house, you need to figure out whether you can afford to buy that house you have in mind in whatever city you want to buy, right? That all comes down to finances. So you need to look at your affordability, right? Which includes your own budget or getting a pre-approved or both. Next is you need to look at how long can you hold the property. And that is important in real estate, okay? The reason is over long term, property prices eventually go up on average. That has been historically the case since 1963 when the data was collected for home sale price. However, in between this period you're holding the house, there will be market ups and downs, and you should be willing to ride that. However, you need to keep that long-term perspective. Never get into buying a house thinking next 2-3 years you will sell it and make profit and do whatever you want. Well, that's like gambling. 2-3 years is a very short period for you to really understand whether the prices will go up than what you paid for. My typical recommendation is 6 to 8 years. Now, what can come in the way of you holding long term? If you are on a H-1B visa or other kind of temporary visa, then You need to figure out whether the visa issue can disrupt your plan to hold the property long term. Job status is another thing. If your company, your department, or your own job is under threat, you need to figure that out. Even if something happens, probably you will know better whether you can find another job quickly, right? And the third thing that can come in the way of you holding the property long term is your parents' status. Assuming they are back in India, whether they need help, they're aged. Of course, something happens and you need to be there to help them. Do you have other siblings who will take care of them, or do you have to go back to India, right? That can also come in the way. So evaluate your situation about holding the property long term and see if any of this comes in the way of doing that. Okay, what are the steps you can take as a home purchase? Like I said, you need to figure out your budget. You need to figure out what locations will work for you. And you need to find out what kind of properties you desire, okay? And having done that, step 2 would be about the actual houses you start seeing, right? And then step 1, only you have located all these things, you have talked to your realtor, and you start looking at homes. So when you are looking at homes, even though, let's say, you decide to buy in Mountain House, right? That is the location. But within our Mountain House, there are different neighborhoods, right? So you need to go and check the house, and you need to figure out whether the homes that you like in Mountain House, they are in the kind of neighborhood you like, or they are in the kind of neighborhood that is convenient for you. Each person have their own different needs, and you need to figure out whether that location will fit that need. And next is the floor plan of the house, right? Once you go inside, figure out whether you like the floor plan of the house. Everybody has different needs. Again, I won't go into detail what a floor plan should be like, but eventually you should like the floor plan. And the third thing is whether the rooms, the spaces within the house is spacious enough for you, right? Whether it's a kitchen, whether it's large enough for you, whether it's the living room, whether it's large, whether the property has a separate living room and a family room, all those things. And if that is large enough, all those things matter. And of course, the fourth item to look for in a house is whether there is enough natural light. Okay. Most people want to get into a house which feels light and airy, not dark and dingy, right? So that's step 2. So step 1 was all about the top level characteristics of what you want: budget, location, and property type. Step 2 is when you get into the property, what to look for. Step 3 is when you have identified a property and now ready to put an offer, what to look for in the property beyond what you have already seen with your realtor or during the open house. What are the things to look for, which we will see in your disclosures, right? So the key things that I suggest everybody to look for is, are there any issues related to the structural safety of the house? Okay. So if it is, you need to figure out whether that's acceptable to you or not, right? Are there any issues which is related to the personal safety of the house, meaning people living in the house? Are there issues there you see? And that could not be expensive, right? For example, garage and the mane entry door, which is the garage entry door, it should be fire retardant door and it should be self-closing, etc. If not, it will lead to fire hazards. It is a personal safety issue. But to fix this is not going to be expensive, but you still need to fix this. So you need to figure that out. And big ticket items, which may not be structural safety or personal safety, but which is expensive, right? For example, AC is not working or end of life, okay? And that's going to cost you money, right? 15,000, 20,000, who knows? So are there any such big ticket items that needs to be taken care of? So these are some of the steps you need to take care when you're actually out there looking to buy a house, right? So that is for home purchases where you are going to live. What about when you are trying to invest in a property? What are the things to look for? Now, before I get there, just a quick brief on why is real estate a good investment asset. There are a few points here. Basically, what I look for is capital appreciation, okay, diversification. If all of your money is stuck in stocks and mutual funds, you may have to diversify. Definitely, real estate investment is a good hedge against inflation, because when the prices are going up, and what happens to stock market? Usually the stock market will go down. Of course, the market today is behaving differently, but in general, that's how it is, because the companies will find it hard to sell their products and services, and the revenues will fall and the stock prices will fall. Whereas real estate will keep going up because it goes up with inflation. Okay. And there are other things which I don't have to go through, but eventually there are multiple reasons why real estate is a good investment. Now, what's the consideration for investment property? Many of the things I discussed for primary home purchase still apply to this. However, there are certain things which is more important in an investment purchase. So in an investment purchase, again, location is important, but the criteria for location may be slightly different. Of course, it needs to be in a good city, commutable, etc., all those things. But it's also about what do you expect will happen to that city, because investment, you expect things to go up. So what do you expect that will happen to that neighborhood or city in the next 7 to 10 years, or how many number of years you plan to hold? Do you think that city is growing? Do you think there is life in that city? Do you think that city is bringing businesses actively? There are new Starbucks, new Chick-fil-A, or whatever stores are coming up, bank are opening their branches. All those things show you that that is a desirable city. That is why these businesses are coming up and setting up shops there. Because unlike we, the normal people, they don't just go and set up a business without doing due diligence. They will have companies who specifically do the research on those cities and then give those information to those businesses to see if it is a viable location to put businesses. So if you see those businesses are setting up shop, then definitely means there is a lot of groundwork done and they think there is growth in that city, right? Actually, there was some article sometime back I read where they said typically homes around Starbucks appreciate at a higher rate. So the article was mostly talking about, okay, there is a reason for that. You should buy homes, if at all, consider that as one factor in buying a house. The answer is yes, it is true, but it's the other way around. Homes around Starbucks don't appreciate because there is Starbucks. It is because Starbucks thinks there is potential for growth in those neighborhood or area. That is why they set up the shop. Okay, and of course the growth is happening and the price increases for those homes. The other thing to look for in investment property is definitely the quality of tenants you'll get. Okay, what kind of people, you have to decide what kind of people will rent in that location, right? And what would be their ability or capacity to pay rents on time. Economic factors, right? I'm not talking about anything else. Economic factors. Do you think you can manage it? And is that location too far away from you that it will be hard for you to manage the tenants or the property? Of course, you can give it to property management companies. If it is too far away, you will be losing some money, right? 7% on average, because you have to pay the property management company. And you also have to ensure that that property management company will take care of the house as good as a owner can, because there are horror stories I've heard with property management companies. So you need to look into that distance, the kind of tenants you'll get, your ability to manage them and issues. And most important, and this is the most important thing in the real estate investment, is to look at the numbers, cash flow and appreciation. Okay. Most of these are estimated, but even the estimated numbers need to be checked. Without that, it's going to be a very bad decision. You may turn out lucky, that's another thing, but you're not making an informed decision. Knowing the cash flow and appreciation for that neighborhood for the past 10, 15, 20 years will help you understand, okay, what can be projected into the future. Okay. So that's the consideration for investment property. Lastly, ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ಮನೆ ತಗೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಥವಾ ಮಾರಬೇಕಾಗಿರೋ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ, of course, we all have general knowledge. I have general knowledge about stocks, mutual funds, which company is doing well, which company is not doing well, etc. But when I put my own money into it, I'm not 100% sure whether I'm doing it right? Meaning if I want to buy some company which seems to have been doing well and they are projecting new products to come up, I don't know all the ins and outs about that company. You need a professional to help you. Of course, the S&P 500 index fund, you can put it there and sleep. I'm not talking about that. Similarly, when buying a real estate, you need to have a professional guide you. Okay. Just think about the big picture about buying such a huge property and select an agent based on some of the qualities I've listed here. Should be a full-time agent. You should be able to figure out whether the person is integrity, is doing it in your best interest, not in his or her best interest. Dedication, availability to you, etc., etc. You can go through those, but at the end of the day, you should be comfortable with the agent, that you can trust the agent to do the right thing for you and make sure that your needs are protected. Okay. Well, I think with that, for the first time in my history of conducting webinar and seminar, I am on time, giving me enough time for questions.
Thank you, Girish.
You're welcome.
Very much. It was a very great summary, and I think we can open up for the questions. I think I told people to write in the question chat. Yeah, I don't see anything yet in the chat. Okay. So I have a question to you. People always say that I hearing in the market, now is our selling market, now is the buying. We just say that only selling market, don't sell it now. This is not the right time to sell. But they never talk about when is the right time to buy, and is there a time not to buy? That's my question.
Okay. So, this is the most common question I get from people who want to buy properties, right? Is it a good time to buy? So here is what I say. If you can give me a minute, let me share a graph. I think that will better explain what I'm trying to tell you. On the ನಿಮಿಷ time ಕೊಡಿ.
Yeah, others can type ಮಾಡಿ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ chat ಅಲ್ಲಿ in case you are outside. ನಿಮಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ you can also chat ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮೆಸೇಜ್ ಹಾಕಿ ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಅವರು ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
ಓಕೆ, ಈ ಗ್ರಾಫ್ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಿದೆಯಾ ನಿಮಗೆ?
ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
ಓಕೆ, ಸೊ this graph is basically showing you historical median sale price of homes going back to 1963. Okay. Andre, at every point, let's say 1965, Q2, what was the median sale price of homes in the US? This is across the country, not California or Bay Area, but you can apply this to most places in US. So what does it mean, median sale price? Andre, ಈಗ ನೋಡಿ Q2 1965, where my cursor is, it says $19,800. So in 1965 Q2, 50% of the homes in US sold above $19,800 and 50% sold below $19,800. So basically this is the median, right? It's typically used in real estate instead of average. price, they use median price. So what this tells you is over a period of time, what has happened to the median price? It has always gone up. Okay. Even in 2008 crash, when it crashed, came down significantly. In 6 years, it came back to the same position. Okay. And then after that, it started going up again. Okay. This is before COVID. And what you see here is post-COVID. Let's ignore the post-COVID because that was once in few century scenario when we had a pandemic, or once in a century scenario when we had a pandemic. So, and that pandemic created its own needs and wants for people, and they had money. So what you can see here is buying a house, basically over a long term, we will not go wrong. That's what I mentioned earlier, right? In between Madhidali, you can see all the prices going a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit up, a little bit down. But at the end of the day, it is going up. Okay. So second thing, at every point of time, let's say I pick some point, Q2 1996. If somebody was planning to buy a house in 1996, all they know is in 1996 Q2, the prices are higher than previous years, right? So what will that person be thinking? Oh, am I paying a lot of money? Am I paying more? Because last year, the prices were low, right? What that person doesn't know is what will happen after 1996. So people only have data about the past. And in the past, prices have always been lower. They don't know what's going to happen in the future. So the point here again is, instead of looking at timing the market, which is very difficult, if not impossible, nobody has that secret formula to find out, okay, exactly when to buy, when to sell, because there are so many variables which will affect the overall economy and the real estate economy, and we cannot predict it. For example, who predicted after COVID, when everybody was dying and people were afraid of losing jobs, etc., that the home prices will go up like this? Okay. So instead of trying to figure out what's the best time to buy based on external factors, when I say external factors, economy and other things, you need to buy a property based on your own internal situation, which is what I talked about. Whether you need a house, whatever kind of house you decide, whether you can afford to buy that today, whether you have the money to buy that today, and whether you can hold it long term. If your answer is yes, yes, yes for all these three, then this is the right time to buy. Once you buy, enjoy the property. Don't go to Zillow estimate and Redfin estimate the very next day after you bought and see whether your price has come down or up. So if you do that, instead of enjoying the house, the very reason you bought that, you will be stressed looking at that number. Just same thing happens with stock market, right? You just keep it, hold it for long term. You trust history. Historically, prices have gone up over long term. Hold it for long term. You will not go wrong.
Girish, I'm very happy you picked the 1965 and 1996. They are two very special years in my life.
Really? Yeah.
1965 is when I was born, and 1996 is when I got married.
Maybe I had it in mind. Nice to know that. Okay.
Sir, one question for you. This is Srinath Devatima City. ಇವಾಗ ಮೌಂಟನ್ ಹೌಸ್ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ, ಓವರ್ ಆಲ್ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ, ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ. ಐ ಆಮ್ ನಾಟ್ ಪುಟಿಂಗ್ ಯು ಇನ್ ಎ ಪೊಸಿಷನ್, ಬಟ್ ನಿಮ್ದು ಏನಾರ ಸಜೆಷನ್ ಇದೆಯಾ? ಇಫ್ ಸಂಬಡಿ ಇಸ್ ಲುಕಿಂಗ್ ಫಾರ್ ಅನ್ ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ, ವಾಟ್ ಲೊಕೇಶನ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಬೆಟರ್ ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಅಪಾನ್ ಯುವರ್ data, basically data, looking at the data, what's coming up, what number of homes are getting sold, and how do you see it? Not specifically like you can just give like one or two scenarios just to take a look for us. Like, I want to invest some time to try to see like whether that what is like that places are good to invest and how to go about it.
Okay. So ನಾನು ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಸರ್ಟೇನ್ ಗೈಡ್ಲೈನ್ಸ್, and that's what I use. And ನಾನು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನೋ That is what I suggest to my clients. Again, think about it. It's just a suggestion. At the end of the day, it's their decision. Because I don't want to tell something to my clients which I myself am unable to risk, right? So here are the things I use for my guidelines. So as far as investment properties are concerned, I want to make sure the property is within 1 hour driving distance of where I live. I don't want to invest in any location beyond that. And I've stuck to that, okay? The reason is very simple. You need to be in control of the house. You need to know what's happening, right? You need to be able to visit the house every 6 months and do an internal inspection, make things are okay with the tenant, right? For example, last year I was looking to buy an investment property, and then I saw one beautiful property, and the price was right, and it had not sold for quite some time. And the neighborhood was excellent, and I loved the place. So I went to see the house, and I saw the house. Everything was good. Backyard required some work because it was not taken care of, but otherwise the house was beautiful. Everything I wanted. Hogi takshana, high ceiling, large living room, that is one of my requirement about the property. I need, when you enter the house, high ceiling, right? Somehow it is more inviting. However, after I called the seller's agent to find out the next steps, she said, hey, I have to tell you something. Ian, she said, this is a former grow house. I said, what do you mean? Believe me, this is the first time I heard the thing called grow house. What do you mean? Oh, the owner had rented the property to a tenant, and the tenant was growing marijuana in that house. Which means, number one, once it was discovered, they had to take effort to kick him out. Second, once marijuana is grown indoors, there are a lot of changes made to the house to grow the marijuana, because it needs additional heat. So they put extra lights that will draw a lot of current. So electricity wiring will change madidare. It will create a lot of moisture inside the house, which will lead to mold. And the city has to come in and make sure the owner has now cleared all the mold and give a certification that is, it is, occupancy certificate kodbekoro. And long story short, any new buyer who has to go and buy the house now will have to be disclosed. This was a grow house where was marijuana being grown in that place. So what will any buyer think? They are scared to buy there, right? Because of course, if they don't know whether those marijuana people who are growing it there are pissed off, and they will barge into the house 1 month after they bought and do something nasty, right? I mean, a lot of unfounded, but definitely fears will be there. So the reason I'm telling you this is, if a house is close to you, you will have better control. You'll be able to manage the tenant. You'll be able to look in the eye of the tenant. You'll be able to visit the house. Because the headaches that come to you after that is something you would never want to buy another investment property and split other, right? That will disrupt your life totally. Second is, of course, knowing it is within 1 hour driving distance, you will have much better idea about the real estate market or the community and stuff like that. So that way, in case you decide to sell at some point of time, you know what you're doing. You'll also see what is happening in that city. So that is the first rule, within 1 hour driving distance. The second thing is, like I said, cash flow, right? You need to look at the cash flow and see what it is. At today's interest rates, no matter where you buy, honestly, there may be some places, I heard somebody who is buying in San Antonio, they are breaking even, Texas, which is possible, I don't know, but I never do any research outside there. In the bigger areas within Northern California, wherever you buy, in today's interest rate, you are going to have negative cash flow. So the question is, how much negative cash flow you can take on a monthly basis, if at all you are willing to take the negative cash flow. Okay. So that's the second thing. Look at the cash flow and see whether it is palatable for you. Of course, you can refinance when interest rate goes down, etc., etc. Eventually, it will not stay at this high rate forever. But at the end of the day, you are facing a negative cash flow in the beginning. Okay. And the third thing is appreciation rate, because eventually when you're buying real estate, especially single unit real estate, whether it's a townhome, single family house or a condo, you are not going to make money through cash flow. You are going to make money through appreciation. Okay. Even if it is break even today, you cannot put $200,000 in a house and just hope to make money through cash flow, because you're not making anything on a monthly basis because it's break even. So what are you hoping for? You're hoping for you'll make money when you sell the property. That means you are hoping for good appreciation. So you need to look at appreciation rate. Now, this is the tricky part. Appreciation rate is very difficult to judge based on what has happened in the past, right? So you need to understand whether that particular city or neighborhood will continue to have demand, will continue to thrive, it continue to develop, it will attract more people so that the prices will keep going up. So that is where a little bit of research has to be done. So, but if you are comfortable with that appreciation rate, which your realtor will be able to help to figure out, or able to at least let you know, then you have found a city where you want to buy a house. Once you have done all these things, patience is the number one important thing in investment, right? Duddide, okay, next month ತಗೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೋಗಬಾರ್ದು. ದುಡ್ಡಿದೆ, but you should keep looking for a house that meets all your financial goals you have defined, appreciation rate, cash flow, everything in the city you're looking for. And once you find a house which meets those criteria, then you should be very aggressive in getting it, making sure you quickly move and try to do your best to get the house. And there will be deals here and there once in a while which will pop up. And once that pops up, you have to go and grab it, because you'll make a lot more money if you buy it at a deal today than hope for it to appreciate and make that money. So most of your money can be made during your purchase rather than when you sell the house, by making sure you get a good deal. Does that answer?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, one more question is, sir, chart alli. So what is the rule of thumb to figure out my primary home affordability?
There are a lot of rule of thumb. If you go on Google, you will get a ton of them. I think most commonly used is the 28% rule, which is your your payment for the house, which includes your mortgage, property tax, HOA fees, homeowners insurance, all of those things together should not be more than 28% of your gross monthly income. Okay. However, remember, these are all thumb rules, which means there is no scientific research behind that, saying that, okay, this is the right number. If you go 28.5%, then you are doing a big mistake. Or if you are able to manage it at 27%, then you are making a fantastic decision. And there is no such thing like that. You have to figure out, you have to do your own budget, how much you bring in home every month, how much of it goes to savings, how much of it goes to the property, how much of it goes to, let's say, your monthly expenses, normal expenses, anything emergency fund you have to create, kids education, all those things you have to figure out and see what number looks good for you. Of course, it is also necessary that you look forward, not just look at today's situation. Look forward and see what do you expect to happen with your job in terms of what maybe you'll be earning more next year, or maybe you're getting more bonuses, maybe a few other things that is happening, and say, okay, instead of just thinking and making your budget based on today's situation, are you able to create some extra money with the idea that you are going to earn more next year? That is fine too, right? but eventually it has to fit your own needs, your comfort level. But yes, 28% thumb rule is what is commonly used. Dave Ramsey and our book is more even more conservative. I think if I remember right, he says 25% of your net income, not gross income. It should be less than 25% of your net income, but he includes more than the items in the 25% that I talked about, not just a mortgage, not just your EMI, property tax, insurance. I think there are a few more things he adds that everything should fit into the 25%. So his rule of thumb is different, but at the end of the day, I think you need to figure out what is right for you.
Girish, this is Anil.
Anil.
Can I add to what you're just saying? See, as
Really?
everybody knows, I do financial planning, right? So what happens is if people stretch themselves too much, then they will not be having the flexibility to do other things like, investing in their 401k plans or other potential investment property in the future. So the rule of thumb is, your debt for housing should not go above 45% total, because that's what, as mortgage officers, we look at what's the total debt to income ratio. That includes credit cards, car payments, house payments, and all of that. But for a primary home, if it's below 25%, they can comfortably live a more fruitful life rather than being strapped just to pay the mortgage payment.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. Again, it depends risk profile different. If you are young enough, right? If you are 24, 25, maybe let's say 28, 29, and you are willing to take that risk for the next 4 or 5 years because you hope to, make some money with your housing, which you probably may not be able to do it. And some people are willing to take that risk. So there is nan prakara. I always tell people, especially first-time home buyers, ask just to call chachi anta. Definitely, their dream is to buy a single-family house, but that is going to put them paycheck to paycheck. I tell them, do you really need to do that? Right? Buy a smaller house which will meet your needs. Buy a townhouse or even a condo. That's okay. For the next 6 to 8 years. You may not have kids, you may have one child. You don't need a single family house because today, if you can get it, wonderful. If you have the money, wonderful. Nobody is discouraging you. But if you're overstretching yourself, you're killing yourself, right? So I agree with that point, but everyone has their own risk profile. So I will leave it to them at the end.
So I have one question. Like, we know a lot of people, especially Indian, origin people, they like to invest in real estate and all of that. So we have, Kannadigas, we have Tamil, Telugu, North Indians, and different subsets. And what I find is Andhra people or Telugu people are very aggressive in, wanting to own multiple real estate, and they do all kinds of things to get the loan sanctioned and all of that. So I'm sure you've seen this trend. And given the history and the time that you've been in the real estate market, like how successful are they, or do they run into trouble when things, like the interest rate go up and all of that? Like, what have you seen especially with the different Indian communities investing in real estate?
Well, I never thought in that angle. So I won't be, or if I did have some experience, the sample is very small for me to say, oh, this is what this community does, right? Because the sample size is very less. Agage, I would hold my comments on that. All I can say is there are certain sections of Indian community who are more aggressive in their approach, because Either they might have come from a background where it is business background. So for them, they don't look at it as a risk. They know what they're doing. Or they have come from a background which is mostly landowners. They're used to see their fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers acquiring land, and they don't see real estate as a, something unapproachable entity because they're used to buying. So they may jump into it right away, like a fish into water. However, whether you belong to that category or some other category, the more risk you take, the more reward, but also problems, right? Because higher risk means you can go up or down. So I've seen when people took a lot of risk that came back and hurt them. I had one person when I was living in Brentwood, who had bought his third house on my street. It's a new construction house. And after I got to know him a few months later, I found out he was delivering pizza. That was his job. His wife was a dietitian at a hospital. I was kind of stunned. That was his third house. He was younger than me. I was stunned. How can he buy 3 homes, him delivering pizza and his wife is a dietitian, whereas I was and my wife, we both were working in good, well-paying jobs. That was our first house. I was ಭಯ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಇವನು 3ನೇ ಮನೆ ಹೇಗೆ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಅಂತ I was always thinking in my head. And then what happened? 2008 crash happened. And then he foreclosed that house. He foreclosed his second house. And then he had moved out of that house on street because he foreclosed it. I bumped into him a few months later and I found out he had to foreclose all the 3 houses. Okay. So that can happen too, because when they take so much of risk, they are not leaving any cushion for themselves if something happens. And they end up in that scenario. So the point is, there is no right or wrong. It all depends on how much risk you can take. But if you want to hear from a good financial advisor, you need to make sure your risks are spread. You diversify. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. This is a financial advice, forgive me. But what I'm trying to say is, no problem in buying real estate or anything else, but make sure it is spread, that if something falls, it doesn't fall all together.
Okay.
Make sense?
I think we have 5 more minutes, Girish.
Okay.
Anyone other questions?
Yeah, one more question. Like, I know people, invest out of state with partnership, where the 2 or 3 friends get together and do that.
Mm-hmm.
Long term, what things should they have in place? Like, should they do a LLP, or like how should they structure it? So, like when they get into partnership of investing in real estate individually with 1 or 2 people.
Okay.
Like legally, because a lot of legal things go into play in the US. If something were to happen to one of the partners, what should they do? Like, like consult a lawyer, CPA, like what should they do? Because a lot of people are interested in doing that.
Okay. So the answer to this question from me will not come as a realtor. It comes from my MBA background, and also before I became a real estate agent, I had started my own startup company in technology. So it comes from that experience rather than coming from a realtor. So the first thing I learned in my entrepreneurship class while doing my MBA was, the first big mistake people do is choosing partners in the business. If you don't make good effort to make sure that that partner is the right fit for you, that business is going to fail. Okay. So my advice to anybody who is going into, this partnership deal for buying any kind of investment is to make sure you know who you are working with. Because when things go wrong, you not only lose money, you also lose that relationship. And I think you don't want that. I especially don't want to lose relationship. I don't mind losing money. Okay. So that's one thing. Second, Yeah, in real estate, it is very common to have a partnership under a LLC because LLC offers the best protection with less legal work to maintain the LLC.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. ಇನ್ನೇನು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಐ ರಿಯಲಿ ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಬಸವರಾಜ್ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಲ್.
I have a last question to you.
ಇದೆಯಾ ಹೇಳಿ.
On 20% investment money ತೊಗೊಳ್ಳುವಾಗ some people I say that 20 to 25 down payment ಮಾಡಿ ಮಿಕ್ಕಿದೆಲ್ಲ ರೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೋಂಗೆ ರೆಂಟ್ EMI should match ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಫ್ಲೋ ಆದ್ರೆ ಒಳ್ಳೇದು, ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಓಕೆ, at least should match, should not be negative, should not putting again ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ರೂಲ್ ಇದೆ. Is it applicable all the time? Is it you should do think in that way, or some places like Bay Area is difficult and you have to pay, you may not get EMI versus rent because of the rate of interest and house prices. So what are your thoughts on that, suggestions?
See, that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to park their money in a real estate property and forget about it because every month they don't have to pay any more for that property. The rent will cover all the expenses. And after 5 years, 6 years, whatever number of years, that property would appreciate and now they will collect a big chunk of profit. That is what everybody thinks they want and they expect to want. Unfortunately, when you are putting 25% down payment, which is the minimum required for investment property today, you are not going to get break-even numbers anywhere in Bay Area, period, for single unit house. You are going to get negative cash flow definitely, and at today's interest rate, you are looking at negative cash flow above $1,000 per month. Okay. However, there are people who are willing to take that risk. I'm currently working with a client. She is looking at a negative cash flow of $1,200, $1,250 for a property she has identified in Concord, and she's okay with that. She is okay to put $1,250 every month for that property in Concord because over a long period, she expects she will make up for that with appreciation. Okay.
Yeah, some people understand, so not everybody cares, but what is your suggestion? Do better as an investor, like your risk, your less risk one, do you suggest to go to outside, out of state, out of area to do match that?
See, namge helidnalla nanu I don't do it myself. I don't buy anything outside 1 hour driving distance. So if anybody wants to do that, I would tell go ahead and do it, but make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure that you can manage the property, or at least maybe they have somebody, their close friend, relative living in that city who can take care of that property because you're living far away. That may help. So if that is the case, I tell them go ahead, and then company, we have a network of brokerages all over the country. So instead of them going and picking some unknown agent on some Redfin, Zillow or something, through my company, I can recommend a good agent in that area. So that way, that agent is answerable to us now, recommend madidrinda. So I will have some control about what the agent does. So that is what I said. That's the next best step is do this. Get a good agent and have somebody who can help you make sure that the house is kept well, taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah, that's possible. But if you ask me, nanu invest martina, no, I won't.
Yeah.
But my clients have invested.
Okay.
Yeah, my clients have invested in other places.
Okay. Yeah, that's understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think time is up. I think there is more questions in the chat, and everyone will be thanked. Thank you very much for your time, Girish. I appreciate. And I know it was 1.5 hour long call, and we are recorded and we can share to some of people who signed up didn't show up, like 50% of the people. Then maybe we send them reminders. We'll see how it goes. If you're okay with that, we can ready to share the recordings to them.
Okay, I recorded it, but let me see where to get it. I think it's in the cloud, but let me see.
Yeah.
Anyway, Basaraj, I don't want to forget thanking you. You followed up with me all the time to make sure that even if I forget, you don't forget, and you made this happen. Tumba thanks nimge. ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಮತ್ತೆ all participants who are here and who are also left, ತುಂಬಾ thanks. On a Saturday morning you all came. I hope it was worth your time. ಬೇರೆ ಏನಾದರೂ clarifications questions ಇದ್ರೆ please feel free to contact me directly. My number is 408-420-0646. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, Girish.
Thank you, Girish.
Bye.
Thank you, Girish.
Thanks,
Really
Anil.
informative.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, it
Bye.
was good.
Bye, Gavi.
Bye, bye.